of engaging with activists on sexual and gender-based violence?
Amandla. I've been enjoying my time here. I just love the drive, of Southern Africa, spirit of fighting for what's right. And I want to probably take my perspective on a continental level, because the problem for you mentioned patriarchy, masculinity, and all those sorts of issues. The problem for me is the club of older men at the AU meeting twice a year to decide the future of the rest of us. We have 54 out of 55 presidents or prime ministers who are men. And for me, it's not only the representation of women, but it's having feminist leaders sitting there to make decisions, whether men or women. They need to be feminists. And when I came into the African Union, I'm like, the AU need to be a feminist institution. And we need to be the face of it. You need to be the face of it. So when I talk to young people across the continent, I'm like, the AU is your institution. If we don't occupy those seats at the summit, if we don't occupy those seats as policy making and decision making, then how it's gonna change, how it's gonna have a ripple effect. And it does have ripple effect. My sister talked about activism. Activism can spark and inspire change all over the continent, and it did. It started in my country, Tunisia, went to Egypt, went to Senegal, went to Burkina. It started in Sudan, went to Algeria. You are starting a movement here in Namibia that can shut it all down all over the continent on GBV. So I feel that we need to also take a Pan-African perspective, because Pan-Africanism is also feminism. And I'm a proud Pan-African feminist. It cannot be one or the other. If you claim to be Pan-African, then you're a feminist. If you're not feminist, don't claim to be Pan-African. Because colonialism was a threat to Pan-Africanism, racism was a threat to Pan-Africanism, and patriarchy is a threat to Pan-Africanism. It's anti-Pan-African to reduce women to maternal functions. It's anti-Pan-African to rape women. It's anti-Pan-African gender-based violence. And also, gender-based violence, when we look at it from a continental perspective in the African Union, the way we try to frame it is that it's violence. So when we talk about women, peace and security agenda, when we talk about terrorism, when we talk about violent extremisms, many leaders tend to isolate these issues. But we bring it back to it's violence too. Raping women during peacekeeping missions is violence. Female genital mutilation is violence. Child marriage is violence. Girls dropping out of school because of their periods, it's nonsense in 2020, it's violence. So I think the intersectionalities of issue will help us move the gender-based violence agenda without going into identity politics. Because always people will tend to take one aspect of what you're trying to convey as a message and turn it into identity politics. But if we bring it in the framework of violence, then we can have much more progress. And then the last thing I wanted to really touch on, this is the ideal scenario for me to sit here. I've been so inspired the whole day by conversations with young people, with parliamentarians in the morning. But the last 2 years I've been fighting for intergenerational dialogue, intergenerational co-leadership. We need to learn among us and across generations. And in order to speed the change we all, want to see and drive as, our generation and the next generation, we cannot do it without this generational solidarity. We need them as our allies because, they understand the context. Mama Gawana said, this reminds me of 30 years ago. Why do we have to live what our mothers lived 30 years ago? There has been a lot of progress, but there have been things that we can speed up, we are impatient and we want change to happen now. And it's coming, I see it, it's coming. Change is coming. It's whether decision makers like it or not, it's coming. And it's bottom up and it's people power. That's history have showed us. But I think the more we sit down in intergenerational spaces, the more we will move with speed, with strategy, with maturity, the more our causes will become stronger. So I really encourage you also as young people to make your spaces intergenerational, to have, a council of elders, to have mentors in the movements that you're leading. These are our allies, and these are the ones who will help us move faster. And in closing, I just want to say how proud I am of you. You're badass. Melody and you, you're doing it. You are bringing this country upside down. You met the president. You're all over the media. You are badass. So continue being that.
Honorable Chebbi, thank you very much for your reflections.